Mr. President.
We're in a quorum call. The senator from Hawaii is recognized.
I ask unanimous consent to vitiate the quorum call.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm here today to speak in support of the nomination and confirmation of Christopher Lohman to be the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Sustainment. We are in a fight for the free world, and that requires maintaining a robust military presence with our allies, including and especially NATO countries. Any U.S. mission also needs a strong logistics chain. That means being able to move troops, medical supplies, fuel, tents, anything else throughout the world at any given time. And this is no longer an abstraction. We have seen what happens when it isn't in place. We're seeing it in real time with Russia's equipment and training problems in Ukraine, and that's why we have an Assistant Secretary of Defense for Sustainment to lead on logistics as we are watching the Ukrainians bravely push back this unprovoked Russian war. Part of the reason that they're having some success is that the Russian logistics chain is absolutely broken. We in the United States and our armed forces take logistics extraordinarily seriously. But we don't have the person in charge of that confirmed to lead the department on logistics. This position is left unfilled because Josh Hawley is blocking Mr. Lohman's nomination. Now, Senator Hawley apparently disagrees with the Biden administration's policy on Afghanistan, and so he's punishing our service members and our NATO allies while a war in Europe is raging. It's worth repeating. Senator Hawley is mad about what happened 6 months ago in a different part of the world, and in response, he's harming the Department of Defense and our national security. It is completely ridiculous. I will not yield. Mr. Lohman is well qualified for this job, and no one is disputing that. He's a Marine Corps veteran who spent nearly 4 decades working for the Army. He has the exact expertise necessary to support our logistics chain and help to make sure that our military remains the best fighting force on the planet. And it is time for Senator Hawley to release this hold and move the nomination forward. This is preposterous. You can do a hold. Members do a hold. The presiding officer has done a hold. I've done a hold. I've voted no on nominees. I've retaliated against Democratic and Republican administrations when I disagree with policy. But a blanket hold on the Department of Defense and holding the person in charge of our logistics chain is absolutely inexcusable. And so, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate consider the following nomination, calendar number 777, Christopher Joseph Lohman of Virginia to be an Assistant Secretary of Defense, and that the Senate vote on the nomination without intervening action or debate, that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table, and that statements related to the nomination be printed in the record.
Is there objection?
Mr. President.
The senator from Missouri is recognized.
Reserving the right to object, now that I have the floor, the senator from Hawaii answered a question. Do you agree with this administration's policy to deny MiGs to the Ukrainians?
Is there an objection?
The senator may not interrogate other senators.
Well, the senator doesn't want to answer any questions, I see. He denied my request to ask him a question a moment ago.
Is
He's
there an
silent
objection?
now when he can answer. Are you not going to let me speak?
Does he object or not?
The regular order has been called. Is there objection?
I object.
The objection is heard. The senator from Missouri is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for finally giving me an option to speak. It's interesting the senator will come to the floor, but he doesn't want to engage in a colloquy. He doesn't want to answer questions. But let's talk a little bit about the policy, the disastrous foreign policy that he is supporting. This is the White House's latest talking points, that their failure in Ukraine is now due to some logistics problem in the Department of Defense, that, of course, they can't be responsible for what they're doing. Just like they're not responsible for anything. They're not responsible for what happened in Afghanistan, their policy. They're not responsible for what's happened in Ukraine, their policy. Let's talk about their policy in Ukraine that the senator seems to favor but doesn't want to answer questions
Mr. President, will the senator yield to a question?
So what has President Zelensky been asking for weeks, indeed months on end? He said, send us planes. What has this administration done? No. Actually, first they said yes, then they said maybe, then they said no. Today, the Secretary of Defense testified before the Armed Services Committee under oath that even though this Congress has appropriated $3 billion in military lethal aid to the people of Ukraine, the Defense Department has so far given them less than a third of it. Why? Because of logistics? No, he was asked that. No, because of policy. His comment was, we are giving them what we think they need. Mr. President, I would just point out that that's not what the Ukrainians think. If you listen to President Zelensky, if you listen to the Ukrainian parliamentarians who have been here, if you talk to them, what they'll say is they need more military aid. They need more help. This administration won't give it to them. Not because of logistics, but because of policy. We don't have a logistics problem. We have a Joe Biden problem. And we've had that problem in Ukraine from day one. This administration's policy was to deter a Russian invasion of Ukraine. It failed. Why did it fail? It's not hard to see. President Biden came to office. What did he do? When Ukraine asked for military assistance,
will the senator
he
yield?
Denied it. Can we have order, Mr. President?
I'm just asking, will the senator yield?
Can we have order, Mr. President?
Senator from Missouri has the floor.
When Joe Biden came to office, the people of Ukraine asked for military assistance a year ago. A year ago. Did he give it to them? No. He denied them military assistance. He denied them lethal aid. What did he do, though, for Vladimir Putin? When he came to office, he green-lighted Vladimir Putin's pipeline. He turned their pipelines on. He turned our pipelines off. What did he do with American energy production? He throttled it down. He turned it off. His first actions in office were to, among other things, cancel the Keystone Pipeline, halt the leasing program in Anwar, issue a halt to new oil and gas leases and drilling permits on federal lands, impose tougher regulations on oil and gas and methane emissions, and a host of new regulations on other energy production. And that had the desired effect. Russian energy production up. Russian revenues up. What's happened since then, since the invasion of Ukraine? Well, it's been one gaffe after another. He won't send them planes. Today, the Secretary of Defense also confirmed that this administration has, in fact, not been sharing intelligence with the Ukrainians. In fact, today the Secretary of Defense had to admit that the administration was going to be forced to change policy, his words, change policy in Ukraine, because, in fact, we had not been sharing all the intelligence we might have with the Ukrainian soldiers and the Ukrainian military, despite their request from it. Whose decision was that? Joe Biden's. It's his policy. The president, though, hasn't been entirely silent. He did have this to say: for God's sake, this man cannot remain in power. So now Joe Biden doesn't appear to know whether we're fighting to or struggling to help the Ukrainians defend themselves, or whether we're launching a war of regime change in Russia itself. You know, Mr. President, the bottom line is this. On one issue after another, when it comes to Ukraine, this president has been wrong. On every aspect of policy that has mattered, he has been wrong. Is it any wonder the Ukrainians are saying, change policy, share your intelligence, send us the aid that we have requested? I say again, we don't have a logistics problem. The White House shouldn't point fingers and shift the blame. We have a Joe Biden problem. That's the nub of the issue here. Well, then there was Joe Biden's comment that sounding like we're going to send ground troops. You're going to see when you go there, he said to U.S. service members, when you go there, and some of you have been there, you're going to see women, young people standing in front of a damn tank just saying, I'm not leaving, I'm holding my ground. The president, it's one gaffe after another, it's one switch in policy after another, it's a disaster from beginning to end. And let's not forget where these foreign policy disasters really kicked off in a big way, yeah, it was in Afghanistan. And am I concerned about Afghanistan? You're darn right I am. 13 service members were killed at Abbey Gate, including one from my home state. And I will never forget talking to his father as soon as we learned of the attack, before, in fact, the official notice of his son's death had been released. And his father asked me to do everything in my power to hold this administration accountable, and that is exactly what I am going to do. Now, has anyone been held accountable yet for Afghanistan? Has somebody been fired? Has somebody been relieved of command? Nope. Has somebody been shown the door? Nope. Has there been a change in policy at the Department of Defense? No, we just stumble from one crisis to another. Why? Because we have a Joe Biden problem. Now, this administration is doing exactly what their commander-in-chief wants them to do, and it is wrong again and again and again and again. So, Mr. President, until we see some change in policy from this administration, until this Senate gets serious about its oversight responsibilities at the Department of Defense, I'm going to ask that for senior defense leaders, we at least observe regular order. I can't block a nomination. I can't halt it. But I can ask that regular order be followed. And that's exactly what I'm going to ask with regard to this nomination and other senior leaders until there is accountability, until we have a change in policy, and until this administration admits that on issue after issue, in virtually every aspect of its foreign policy, it's just dead wrong. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The senator from Hawaii is recognized.
So what Senator Hawley wants is an excuse to go through his litany of criticisms of the Biden administration. And the truth is that every senator has that right without blocking the logistics guy for the Department of Defense. He could have brought his floor charts out here and given a withering speech about all of the things that he thought went wrong. But he's doing a very specific thing. He is damaging the Department of Defense. We have senior DOD leaders. We have the Armed Services Committee coming to us and saying, I don't know what to tell him. I don't know how to satisfy him, but he is blocking the staffing of the senior leadership at the Department of Defense. And this comes from a guy who raised his fist in solidarity with the insurrectionists. And this comes from a guy who, before the Russian invasion, suggested that maybe it would be wise for Zelensky to make a few concessions about Ukraine and their willingness to join NATO. This comes from a guy who just about a month ago voted against Ukraine aid. He's saying it's going too slow. He voted no. He voted no on Ukraine aid, and now he has the gall to say it's going too slow. And this final insult is that until, Secretary Austin resigns? That's not a serious request. People used to come to me during the Trump administration all the time. Do you think Trump should resign? Do you think Tillerson should resign? That's a stupid, of course, I think all the people I disagree with should quit their jobs and be replaced with people I love. Of course I think they should all resign. That's not how this world works. That is not a reasonable request from a United States senator that until the Secretary of Defense quits his job, I'm going to block all of his nominees. That's preposterous. And coming from a person who exonerated Donald Trump for extorting Zelensky for withholding lethal aid. They withheld lethal aid unless Zelensky would release false smears against Joe Biden's son. And then he voted to exonerate President Trump for this. And so spare me the new solidarity with the Ukrainians and with the free world, because this man's record is exactly the opposite. I yield the floor.